Hey guys, so this PPT presentation is related to the production of red sparkling wine. It has been prepared by Amal, Amandeep, Gangaram, Harkamal, Jyoti, Krisha, Louis and myself Rohit. So today me and my partner Amandeep will be presenting you the production of red sparkling wine.
So now the question comes, what is the difference between the red wine and the sparkling red wine? It is similar to the case of water. We know that the difference between the still water and the sparkling water is that the sparkling water has bubbles because of carbon dioxide. It's just a similar case with the red wine. Red wine is different from sparkling red wine because sparkling red wine has bubbles due to carbon dioxide.
So let us understand how this red sparkling wine is produced. First of all, the grapes are harvested at an appropriate maturity level. Now, how is the maturity decided? It is decided based upon the sugar content, the pH, and the titrable acidity. Once the grapes are harvested, they are sent to a machine called a stemmer or the crusher. So, what the stemmer or the crusher does is it removes the stems from the berries and it breaks down the skin of the berries. Once these berries have been destemmed and crushed, what we get is called as must. The next step is to send the must to something called as the cold soak. During cold soak, the must is cooled down to 10 to 20 degrees Celsius for 1 to 2 days. What happens during this stage is that if at all there is any indigenous yeast present inside the must, their activity will get decreased. And besides that, it also promotes the contact time between the skin and the juice. This helps the color pigments and the phenolic compounds to extract and come into the must. Once the cooling down is done, the fermentation takes place, but before the fermentation happens, something called as must adjustments need to be done. So what is done during must adjustment? Firstly, the sugar content is adjusted. Second, the pH is adjusted. Third, the titrable acidity is adjusted. Next thing is the addition of SO2. Now what SO2 does is it acts as an antioxidant as well as a disinfectant. So if there are any harmful or unwanted bacteria or unwanted yeast, wild yeast present inside the must, they will be killed by the SO2. Now when is SO2 added depends upon the producer. It can be added at various stages of the production. Now besides all these, what is important to be added is the nutrients. The most important thing is a source of nitrogen. Then besides that, some other yeast nutrients are added and some vitamins are added.
So once the must is ready, the next step in the production is the primary fermentation. Primary fermentation takes place in open top containers and it is done with the help of a yeast culture, Saccharomyces cerevisiae. What happens in this fermentation process is that sugars are converted into alcohols. But this conversion of sugar into alcohol also releases gases. The gases tries to push themselves up towards the surface and this causes the skin to rise to the surface as well, and this forms a layer called the cap. It is essential to punch down this layer periodically with the help of the process called the cap management. Cap management ensures that there is no heat entrapped inside and that all the pigments and the phenolics from the skin get extracted in the juice. For primary fermentation, it is important to maintain the temperature and the pH for the efficient activity of the yeast. So the temperature should be maintained below 35 degrees Celsius while the pH is set between 2.8 to 4. After primary fermentation, the next steps are the pressing and the racking. In the pressing step, all the juices are released and the skin is separated from the juice, while in the racking step the extracted juice is transferred from one rack to another. This helps in leaving behind the sediments and it gives more purity to the juice with each advancing step.
Now remember that we are not producing the red wine, we are producing the sparkling red wine. That's why for sparkling red wine, creating the spark is important. What do I mean by spark? By spark, I mean creating the carbonation, introducing the carbon dioxide is important. What we obtain after primary fermentation is the base wine. So once the primary fermentation, pressing and racking is complete, we obtain a base wine. Now a winemaker might choose to blend various base wines to form something called as the cuvee. If we add yeast and sugar to this cuvee, secondary fermentation will take place and something called as tirage is formed. Now there are various methods to form the sparkling red wine. Today we are discussing three important methods. First one is the tank method, second one is the traditional method, and third one is the simplest, that is the carbonation. Let's see tank method first. As the name suggests, a tank will be used. So this tank is filled with the base wine. Now to this base wine some sugar and yeast is added. As soon as the sugar and yeast is added, secondary fermentation will take place in this vessel. So after the secondary fermentation inside the tank is completed, the wine is sent for filtering. Once the filtering is done, it is filled into the bottles, and after filling into the bottle, some additional dosage of sugar is added. This sugar will further help the yeast to undergo fermentation, and the carbon dioxide which is formed will be trapped inside the bottle. That is why it will produce the sparkling effect. The second method is the traditional method. What happens in the traditional method is that the winemaker will first form the cuvee by blending various base wines. To these base wines, yeast and sugars are added, but before that the cuvee is transferred into a bottle and the yeast and sugar is directly added into the bottle. If you compare this and this method, here the yeast and sugar was added into the tank, but here there is no role of tank. The yeast and sugar is directly added to the bottle. Now these bottles are locked and kept for aging. During aging process, the secondary fermentation takes place. After the aging is done, there is something called as riddling. During riddling, these bottles are turned upside down at an angle. All the lees which is present inside the bottle will collect at the neck. This lees is frozen and at a pop this lees gets removed. After the lees is removed, some additional dosage of yeast and sugar is added and the bottle is corked and closed. So the additional dosage will help the bubble formation, that is the carbonation. In both these methods, the carbonation, that is the carbon dioxide, is introduced naturally during the secondary fermentation. Now, what is the difference between the tank method and traditional method? The tank method is usually employed for huge batches. It is helpful in producing the mid-range wines and it is relatively easy as compared to traditional method, which is very labor intensive. Although this traditional method is labor intensive, it is used for producing high quality wines. That's why only small batches are produced by using the traditional method.
The third method is the easiest method and it is called the carbonation method, in which simply the ready-made carbon dioxide is mixed with the wine inside the pressurized tank. This helps in the mass production of the sparkling red wine. Even though this method is the easiest, but it gives the low quality sparkling wine. After the wine has been carbonated, now is the time to package the wine. So the glass bottles are considered the ideal material of choice because the glass bottles are inert and it does not react with the content inside it. Over the years, the quality of the glass has been improved, and now the glass which is being produced these days can withstand any pressure that is being created by the gases released by the sparkling wine. These glasses are also tinted and colored to reduce the effect of the direct light with the content inside the glass bottles, and the bottles are then closed with the corks. Closing the bottles of the wine with the corks is a traditional way, and the corks are being made from a evergreen oak tree, that is the Quercus subile. One of the interesting facts is that the Portugal produces over half of the world's cork.
So these are the references. Thank you.